Everybody, I'm Kevin Miller, Chief Exec of LiveCode. I'm here all the way from Edinburgh, Scotland, just about over the jet lag. I've been coming down the west coast doing these FileMaker user groups. And I'm here today to talk about a pretty new product we've got, which is called LiveCode for FM. LiveCode is a software development environment that we've made and have produced for a number of years. And what we've done is we've integrated it into FileMaker. Some of you will have been to our website and will have seen a little bit about what it is that we do. Some of you may not have done that. So what I'm going to start off by doing is just playing you a short 2-minute video clip, which gives you a little bit of context, a little bit of history, just shows you where this product kind of fits. So hopefully this will play okay.
Introducing LiveCode for FM. To rapidly create fantastic data-driven apps, nothing beats FileMaker. But don't you wish you could add a billing calculator, survey tool, tree data display, animated chart or a rich text editor, or integrate features from the operating system or complex web APIs? Now you can. But first, a little history. In the 80s, there were two programming worlds at Apple, HyperCard and FileMaker. Remember HyperCard? You're not alone. Millions of people got their first taste of coding with HyperCard. Great news. LiveCode picks up where HyperCard left off, providing a powerful, modern version of what HyperCard could have become, and more. By combining LiveCode and FileMaker, you can build more sophisticated apps. You can display fully interactive content within FileMaker, or integrate external systems, while still utilizing FileMaker's great toolset. You can create powerful functionality, whether you're using FileMaker in your company, as a consultant, or even creating plugins. We've been empowering software development for 15 years. Tens of millions of LiveCode apps have been delivered by small businesses without a team of professional programmers, and by major organizations like NASA and KLM, developing powerful and scalable solutions. LiveCode for FM transforms your capabilities, bringing together the world's easiest data-driven app builder and the world's only native app building platform for everyone. Start your free trial with ready-made samples today.
Thank you. We didn't make it in LiveCode. No, not the video. Okay, so to give you a little bit of context, just to kind of compare and contrast LiveCode and FileMaker. LiveCode's got a good set of strengths, and so has FileMaker, and they're actually really complementary because they're strong in different areas. So LiveCode's a really good tool for building interactive apps. By apps, I mean apps that take advantage of native operating system features, that have really complex interactive UIs, that have SVG graphics, that have things that you would associate with traditional app building and app development. FileMaker has got really great drag-drop data layouts, so it's all very much centered around producing really strong data-driven applications. LiveCode integrates with the operating system and with the web. FileMaker mostly integrates with the web. There's not that much you can do to go out to the native operating system from FileMaker. LiveCode's got some really powerful text and data processing capabilities. So it's very good at bringing in information from different data sources, and parsing that information, and then maybe putting that into the database or doing something with that. But LiveCode doesn't have a built-in database backend. Yes, you can build database apps in LiveCode if you know SQL and you want to go to all of that trouble. It's a lot more work than it is in FileMaker. FileMaker really does that very well. It's got multiple users built in, the scalability built in, the integrated database engine, all the relationships that you set up visually. So if you put these two things together, you've got this kind of best of both worlds. You've got all of that native app building capability, and you also have all of FileMaker's great data-driven tools, which are really quite unique and quite special. To give you an idea of some of the different ways that LTFM can be deployed, there's lots of different types of apps out there, and there's lots of different ways to use this technology. So we can do this as a plugin within FileMaker 14, 15, and 16. So it simply integrates into any of those versions. And that plugin also installs within a solution. So your end user does not need to know about it at all. It simply looks to see if it's installed in the system, and if it isn't, then it will quietly install itself behind the scenes. You don't need to go looking for the plugin directory or do anything complicated like that. We support Mac and Windows 32-bit and 64-bit on Windows. And we also, at the moment, you can build a native LiveCode iOS application which will communicate with FileMaker, so you've got bi-directional communication. We will very shortly have full support for embedding LiveCode into the iOS SDK on FileMaker, and that's a bit better because it means you don't have to ship two applications in order to put those two things together. At the moment, you can run it on FileMaker Server. It's a plugin that downloads and runs client-side. Very shortly, there will also be a plugin that runs on the server, so if you want to do server-side processing and that kind of thing, you'll be able to do that from LTFM. You can also use LiveCode Server to communicate with FileMaker Server. LiveCode Server's got a whole variety of capabilities, and that's a way to run it on the server right now, even before we've done that integration. You can also use it as a front-end app, potentially on Android, that communicates with FileMaker Server. I'm going to come back and talk about some things around that in just a moment. Finally, you can deploy LiveCode applications as HTML5 components. So that means that you can put them inside a solution to WebView, and that's suitable if you don't want to install a plugin at all into FileMaker. Now, of course, you don't get the same access to the whole operating system if you're running inside the WebView, so there are some limitations. It's not necessarily suitable for all types of app, but there are some types of app where that's a really good solution. So just to understand where LiveCode is positioned in terms of programming languages and the kind of ease of use, if you think about FileMaker, we hear stories all the time of people who say, well, with FileMaker, I was able to do in a few days something that would have taken me weeks or months to do in using a database like SQL to set up. It's the kind of easy-to-use, very rapid way of building data-driven apps for business. LiveCode is the same to the programming world in the sense that LiveCode is a very fast, very rapid, easy-to-use programming environment. So compared to traditional languages like JavaScript and Python, it's a level up. It's a level closer to English. It requires a bit less knowledge. It's a bit more productive. For those of you that are familiar with AppleScript, if you think about AppleScript and you imagine that AppleScript was cross-platform, had full access to the operating system, let you build rich, interactive user experiences, let you crunch and process data, you're starting to get a feel for what LiveCode is. It's kind of a bit like that in that sort of class of language. It's got that sort of level of English-like ease of use when you're building a LiveCode-based application. This is a quote up on our website, which I really like. It's from Robert Cailloux, who co-developed the World Wide Web at CERN. And he said, if I had included a programming language specification when we introduced the World Wide Web, it would have been like LiveCode. Millions of man-hours of productivity would have been saved. In fact, he told me that this was one of his only regrets at CERN, that he hadn't specified a language when he had the opportunity to do that, and we got JavaScript. Quite a good regret to have, I think. So this is an example of a LiveCode line of code compared with JavaScript to give you an idea of the differing levels of complexity. So this line along the top here is LiveCode, and if you imagine that we've got a block of text which is just maybe first name and then last name, just separated by a comma. So the LiveCode script here, you can pretty much understand what it's doing if you take a moment to kind of read it. So sort the lines, so that's lines of the text, descending, so that's in reverse alphabetical order, by last item of each. And item is what we call syntactic sugar. It's a way of describing the way that text gets broken up. And by default, that's a comma, but you could change that to any character or block of text or word or whatever. So if you run that line, you're going to get your text sorted in reverse alphabetical order by surname. To do exactly the same thing in JavaScript, you're looking at a block of JavaScript that is 9 lines long, and it contains 64 symbols. So there's more symbols in this block of JavaScript than there are characters in the LiveCode code. And none of those symbols are optional. It is very unforgiving. If you leave off one of those semicolons, then your JavaScript is not going to work. So that gives you an idea where LiveCode sits in comparison to traditional languages. It's something that you can get your head around. It's very productive, and it means that when you come back to read your code later, it's usually pretty readable. It's almost semi-self-commenting, if you like. So a quote from Todd. He's been a long-standing LiveCode user, and obviously very well known in the FileMaker community. And he said, LiveCode for FM brings together two programming worlds that I've been using since the early 90s. Now I get to mash up LiveCode stacks with FileMaker to create new kinds of interfaces, connect to the operating system at the lowest level, or reach out into the cloud. I'm very excited about what this brings to the FileMaker platform. The sky is not even a limit. And to give you some context, we've been doing this for 15 years. We have customers small and large. We have things like there's a NASA-built satellite that uses LiveCode in mission control. There is a large part of the back end for KLM flight booking system is written in LiveCode. And the NHS, we've been using it to teach clinicians to write their own apps because they're on the front line and they've got a good idea of the sorts of apps that are needed. But also, we get lots of stories of small companies that have got a team of 2 or 3 developers who are building solutions that would typically take them 3 times the team size in order to go and build. So it's a very friendly, very welcoming community, lots of libraries out there, lots of knowledge, lots of support, lots of help in LiveCode, and it's a very mature platform. We've got lots of customers that we've picked up over many, many years. Exactly, yeah. No, LiveCode's been around as an independent platform for about 15 years, so it's its own technology. Yeah. Yes, you can. Yes, absolutely. Any of them. Yes. We have data connectors to almost everything. Yes, we do. Yeah. There's a small group of FileMaker live coders, yeah, and it's growing all the time. You can find it on the, if you go onto our forums, there's a forum area for it. So this is a customer profile, a recent adopter for LCFM, Dan Stevens at Todd LLC, and he ships a program-independent set of electronic price books and catalog sheets. And the reason that he picked this up is that he's got a lot of information in a FileMaker database that he wants to be able to use, but he also wanted to produce a very sophisticated tool that allows him to get a user to click through various different options, display and drill down in tree views to get to different components, add up a price, go through, show different images, have things that slide in and slide out. And it's really just, it's a UI that's difficult to build, really difficult to build in FileMaker, but very, very easy to build in LiveCode. So he built that in LiveCode, he kept all his data in his FileMaker solution, and then he pulls out the information that he needs, he brings this all up on the screen, and you get this great user experience, and it saves all of that data back into the database. And the other reason he chose it was for the data security capabilities. We've got really strong encryption built in, and that's something that he was using for part of the solution as well. So I'm going to give you a demo now of what this looks like. I'll start out in FileMaker. So this is LiveCode FM, and we're running in FileMaker Pro. And this is a solution that we ship with LCFM, and it's to give you an idea of some of what's possible. So this is not the limits to what you're able to do with LCFM. It's just to give you some sort of orientation and to give you some idea of what you can do. We're now in FileMaker. Yes, this is a file. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this solution, everything's unlocked, so you can go in and you can see how we're calling out to get to LiveCode, and you can use that information in your own solutions. So as soon as I press one of these buttons, at this point, a window comes up. And that window is now LiveCode. So we've gone from FileMaker to LiveCode, and we're still running in FileMaker, but we are now in LiveCode. So everything here is now a LiveCode window. And in this, what we've got is we've got a number of very simple, straightforward little scripts to give you some idea of how to get data in and out of FileMaker. And this particular script is put fm param after URL. So it's taking the parameter and then appending that information after a URL, which is file path. So it's basically reading or writing stuff out to a file. So here's another one to do a color picker, for example. So answer color and then return it. So answer color is just brings up the standard color chooser, and then return it just sends that data back. So you've got the color value that comes back. So we've got a number of different functions here just to give you an idea of the syntax and an idea of LiveCode script, things for copying files, creating folders, getting a geolocation back, working with QR codes, generating random data. So it's a simple workspace. You can go in, you can make little changes, you can try them out, you can see how it works. And this is a LiveCode script, and it communicates with a FileMaker script. So in FileMaker, you call LiveCode function, which then goes and runs a block of LiveCode script and then sends the data back to FileMaker. So we also have a form builder, and again, you can build just about any kind of form you could imagine in LiveCode. This is just to give you some idea of some of the forms that you're able to build and what you're able to do. So don't assume that this is all that you can build, but these are just a few examples. You can drag drop to create your own forms. So we've got a little workspace here where you can try out different functions, and this is one to draw a progress bar. So if I change this value, then you'll see that it redraws the progress bar. And what's happening there is that FileMaker is calling this function, and it's sending in the parameter the value, and that's going out to LiveCode, which is then drawing an image of this progress bar, sending that back to FileMaker. So this is an image container that's being displayed on the FileMaker layout. Now that's a very simple progress bar, but it could be a pie chart, or it could be anything else. It's just to show you that you can use LiveCode to programmatically render an image and send that back to FileMaker. We also have a few components here. So again, these are all examples, and I'll show you in a moment how you can actually edit these yourself. So this is a component for taking a photo, and it's quite dark, but you can just about see me. And if I press this button here, count down 3, 2, 1, and take a very grainy photo, and then return that back to FileMaker. And again, it's not to say that that has to be how the photo. I'll come back and show you how you customize that in a moment. So we have a PDF selection dialog here, so you can go in and display a PDF and go through it. There's a lot you can do with PDFs in LiveCode, and I'm going to go on in a few minutes and show you how to take text out of a PDF and actually convert a PDF invoice into FileMaker. But in this example, we're pulling in images, and you can also just select text and pull in the text. Again, just to give you some idea of some of the PDF manipulation capabilities. We also have a Google Drive library, Dropbox library. These are obviously for working with Google Drive and Dropbox. There's a little annotate image function here. So again, if I bring this up, I can add markers to an image. Now these markers are just numbered markers, but they could be text fields, they could be SVG graphics. I mean, you can do whatever you want to do. And the way that we've structured this example, we've left it so it's editable, so you can actually come back into it later and make changes. We've saved that as layers, so that you're able to manipulate that later on. So if you need to do image overlays, or you need to do watermarking, or you need to do image editing, or anything like that, then that's all something that you can do. Yes. New debug LiveCode. Yes. So the LiveCode environment has a debugger. We'll go over to that environment in a little while, and I'll show you how the editing works. If you do a form in LiveCode, then the form pops up in a window. I don't know if I got that example. So yeah, you build your form, and it comes up. Basically, you run it, and then choose what you want, and the value comes back. And then there's just this little notification thing. You can just bring up like a notification window. So this sample solution is there for you to try things out and to try some of the components that we've made out. And we're adding new components all the time, so it's very easy for us to do. If there's a specific thing that you need, drop us a line, and we'll see if we can put that together and get it up on the website and get it into the sample solution, because it's very easy for us to build these things. The real power of LiveCode, though, is that the LTFM also ships with a full copy of the LiveCode business development tool. And I'm going to show you that now, because this is where you go to build anything that is a little bit bigger or a little bit more complex than something that you're just going to build inside that solution, the little script editor that's in FileMaker. So this is LiveCode, and in LiveCode, you start out by creating a new stack, which is what we call an application. And we're just using a metaphor, a card and stack metaphor. So a card is a screen. We have all of our various different interface element objects here. These are all customizable. These are the ones that we ship with the platform. We're adding new ones all the time. You can get third-party ones. You can build your own. But in this case, I'm just going to drag out a button. And I'm going to open that button. And what we're going to do is we're going to have that button just pop up a dialog that says hello. So I'm going to call the button say hello. Then I'm going to open the code editor for that button. And what I want the button to do is I want it to respond on mouse up. So that's when the mouse button goes down, it comes back up. Now on mobile, that maps automatically to a tap, so you don't need to change the code. And I'm going to type in answer. And as I start typing, it gives me some suggestions. So if I'm not sure what the syntax is, I can go and follow that. And then I'm just going to say, hello everyone. And I apply this here. Now, LiveCode gets its name by the fact that everything is live. So I was in edit mode at the moment when I just created that button. And as soon as I select this tool in the top left here, I go into run mode. And that means that I'm able to press the button and the dialog comes up straight away. So it's very iterative. You can go into your script, you can make a little change, you can check you've got it right, and come back. You go backwards and forwards that way, and that makes it very easy to build an application. You can then go and install this window essentially into FileMaker so that you can pop this up if that's what you wanted to do. So that's the flow. You save this back into FileMaker and you bring this window up. Doing it that way. It will not work. So with WebDirect, you may be able to. There are some limitations. We do have the ability to display FileMaker stuff as an HTML5 output, so you can display it within a web page. Certainly popping up a dialog box will work, but not everything in LiveCode works on the web. It just depends on what you need to do. Yes. Yes. Can you repeat the question? Can I repeat the question? Yes, of course. Yes, I shall do that. Okay, so that's how you start building a program in LiveCode, and I'm also going to show you, we have various interactive guides that help walk you through building different kinds of applications. And there's one that ships with the FileMaker solution, so it's a good place to start. So if I load this up here, this is a guide that shows you how to build. It's a world time calculator. So the idea is that you pull out from the database the time zone that the person is in, and then determine whether or not they're asleep before you phone them. So I'm not going to do the whole thing because it would take too long, but I'm just going to show you that it basically points out step by step what it is that you need to do in order to build this application. And you can go through and you can follow along, and you can essentially build this particular thing. So it's pointing at all the various different things, it's showing you how to size it, it'll get you to drag out the clock. I'm kind of cheating because I'm having it do it for me. Obviously, we want you to do the steps so that you learn them, but it's a good little lesson that comes with it, and there's quite a few other lessons actually built into LiveCode in a similar form. So it's quite fun, it's quite easy to get into, and it lets you walk through and lets you start to build and understand how to do things. Another thing that's really important to note is that everything in the solution that we provide is entirely open. It's available. So I go into the components within the solution. If you remember, I had the take photo component earlier. If I load up my take photo component, then I can see that I have it running here in LiveCode. And if I go from my edit mode here into run mode, then immediately it's running in LiveCode, so I know that all my scripts are working. And I go back into edit. So if I wanted to change that, for example, I wanted to maybe take out the LiveCode logo because I'm going to rebrand it with my own company logo, I could simply delete that logo, and then I could go and import my own logo and put it on there very easily. And as soon as I save that, when I refresh that in FileMaker, it's going to be back up to date. But because all these solutions are open, you can go in and you can see how all of the code works. So the question is, there are various different components. Are there third-party components also? So the answer is that there are lots of different LiveCode libraries and examples and functions out there, thousands of them that you can go and find, and you just open them up and save them out into FileMaker. So yes, lots of things. So the question was, do you have to purchase the components? A lot of the components in the LiveCode community are free and open source. There are some of them that are also for purchase, but there's hundreds and hundreds of free libraries out there. It just depends on what you need to do. So the question was, if you wanted to do, say, a linear regression on FileMaker data, are there math functions? There are a couple of math libraries out there, as far as I'm aware of. I don't know from the top of my head, but I've certainly seen a couple. So the question was, a few screens ago, there was a carousel of folders. Is that a UI that you can build in LiveCode? I'm trying to remember which screen that was. It's a pretty standard carousel. Yeah. Yeah, you absolutely can build that in LiveCode, yes. You can build pretty much any user experience you can imagine. When you've got access, you can do 2D animation, you can do SVG graphics, you can do bitmap graphics, you can have things respond as the mouse moves, or on a device, you can use all of the sensors. So pretty much any UI you can think of, you can do. Okay, so it is the question was, are all of the examples window-based, or are there any examples where LiveCode works on the layout level? So most of the more complex UIs, where we're going out to the operating system or we're building really complex interactivity, are window-based. You can, however, run LiveCode within the web view, so that would be a way of getting it onto the layout. And also, if you're doing things like having it render images, then again, you can send those images back. So, for example, that example that I showed you, with the progress bar. So in this case, that is actually happening behind the scenes. The rendering is happening behind the scenes, and it's returning that image to the layout. So those are the two ways of getting things onto the layout. The question was, am I going to show you at some point where things are saved to FileMaker? Yes, I'll come on to that. Yeah. Okay, so if you want to take this solution apart and start to understand how it works, if you remember, this button had a countdown timer, and then it took a photo. So I can go in and I choose to edit the script, and I can see that I've got a little function, so I just follow that back. And then I have my take photo routine. And if you click on the various different things, the documentation comes up at the bottom. I can expand that out if I want to get more information. So I can choose this one, for example, for it's setting the camera to be visible. If I expand that, I can see that actually there's quite a few things I can do. I can, for example, choose whether to use the front camera or the back camera, whether to use a video device or an audio device, whether to turn the flash on, whether to change the exposure mode. Obviously, my laptop has none of those features, but if you were on a device that had those features and you wanted to customize the camera, then all of those options are available. So it's fairly fully featured. We really go pretty deep in terms of what you're able to do on all of the various different platforms. So what we then do, we're hiding our little camera widget, and then wait 1 second, wait a second, and then repeat with counter equals 3 down to 1. So this is us doing our countdown, and they're putting the counter into the counter field, showing the field, and then waiting a second, and that's our 3, 2, 1. So you can pretty much read that, and if you wanted to change that to 5 seconds, and you can change that to 5 seconds quite easily. So you can start to make little changes and just see what they do and how they affect things. So then we're going out to the actual camera and we're taking a photo, and then there's a couple of things here just to size it. You can kind of drill into all of those. If you look them up, you'll see what each one does. If you just click on each of the terms, it'll tell you what it's doing. But we size it, and then we're sending the information back to FileMaker when we close the dialog. So all of a sudden, you could go into that and start to make little tweaks to your camera object and get an idea as to how that works. In terms of saving that back into FileMaker, so all of these components are inside the components directory, which is buried very deeply inside the plugin. And so what you do, I was actually editing that component directly, so I don't need to do anything else. If I restarted FileMaker or I asked it to refresh in FileMaker, then it would update that. But to install my own components, there is a little screen here just in terms of custom components. You just go in and you choose, component, and you choose to put in a new component, and you just choose the file from LiveCode here, and it'll just save it into your solution. So that's it. It's ready to go. It does everything. It copies it all in, and it has it ready to go, and then you can call it from your FileMaker script step. So a question online is, will LiveCode work in a runtime? As far as I know, I mean, runtime support plugins, so I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work. So we were at DevCon, and we got various questions. And one of the questions that we got several times was, is it possible to take text from a PDF invoice and import that, parse that, and import that into fields within FileMaker? That was a question that came up a lot. And then another question that we got was, can we take fields from FileMaker and can we save that out as, say, a Word document? And we actually put together a couple of little examples of how to do both of those things. And we did them in the morning on the conference, as in people came up to us and asked us how to do it, and they came back like an hour later and we had it done. So I know there's some learning to pick up something like LiveCode. It's new, there's a lot to take in, but when you do get productive with it, it is very, very productive. The sorts of things that you can put together in a morning are really, really impressive. So I'm going to show you this so you get some idea of how this works. So this is the little invoice importer that we put together. Now, if you were building this for a customer, you probably wouldn't build it visually. You wouldn't have a whole load of screens. You would simply have choose a file on disk and import the PDF. But because we want to show how it works, we've actually built it on a series of screens so that you can see us bringing in all the information and then doing the things that we need to do with that information. And that's actually quite a good way to problem solve. It's quite a good way to put together a solution when you're kind of trying to work out how to do it. And then you just take out the UI stuff at the end and you do it directly without having to show all of those steps. So here we have a bunch of Adobe invoices. And these are invoices that are all just sitting in a folder. So they're literally just sitting here in my Finder. But they could be anywhere. They could be in Dropbox, they could be in Google Drive, they could be, it doesn't matter where those invoices are or where you're pulling that information from. We're using the LiveCode PDF viewer to show a little preview of those images so that you can see them. And then on the right-hand side here, we have the text of the image, and I don't know how well you can see it on the projector, but as we go through, it's pulling out the text. So to pull out all of the text in a PDF document in LiveCode is one line of code. You literally just ask it, and it just pulls out all of the text, and there you have it. So when you do that, we then went on and we wrote this little sequence that takes some of the individual items. So we can see here that we have an invoice number, an invoice date, and so on. Now we didn't write something that parsed every single field. All we did was we pulled out the product, the unit price, the quantity, and the supplier. And what we did was we parsed that into some JSON. Now, it doesn't have to be JSON, but FileMaker 16 have done some really fantastic work putting in really solid JSON support. So we thought, let's take advantage of that. Let's show you how you do that. So in the code for this, you can go in and see how each of these individual steps work. So we have our little routine here, which is passing in text that's come from the PDF. Now, all the green stuff here is comments. That's not code. You don't have to understand that. That's telling us that's helpful. The actual code is just in the lines in between the green. So there's actually probably more comments in this than there is actual code, certainly in this little section anyway. So if p-extracted text, which is the text that just came in, contains Adobe system software, well, that's a fairly good clue that this is an Adobe invoice that we're parsing. And then we've got this routine that we've made which parses an Adobe invoice. Now, if you wanted to build an invoicing system that then brought in 100 different formats, then you could have a whole load of different routines that brought it in from different formats and parsed it, or you could even try and write something a bit more general that looks for specific words like order number and so on and pulls that information out. So if we follow that through, we can see a little routine here. We're doing a little bit of regular expression matching. There is a little guide in LiveCode that shows you how to build those, so it's not as difficult as it looks, but it's a little bit fiddly to pull out the invoice number, the invoice date, and then we build that information, and we've got a little routine that turns it back into JSON and spits it out. So again, an easy place to start is to take this example, see how we've done it, and then change order number to something else that I want from my PDF, and all of a sudden we've got something that's going to bring in an invoice from a different format. So the question is, that assumes that the invoices look alike and things are in the same position. The answer is they need to have the same text. They don't necessarily have to be in exactly the same position, but it needs to have the same text in this There are other ways of pulling information from regions of PDFs if you know where the position is, but you don't know what the text is going to be. That's a different. So then we have the insertion step, and here we've worked out the SQL that you need to insert the records back into FileMaker. So we're taking the JSON and returning it into an SQL statement to insert it back into the database. Given that we've done this, again, it's a good place to start if you want to figure out how to send information back to a database. But we're just building up an SQL statement and insert into send the information back, and lets you use it in FileMaker. So what we did was we then put together a solution which had in it, and we built an interactive import which brings up all of those steps, and then just import file. It just lets you choose a file on the disk. So if I do my interactive import, I choose an invoice, and I go forward here, and I go through here, then we should see a record count go up, and I close that and come back. Not a huge amount to see because I think that invoice is pretty similar to some of the other ones, but it's pulled out the number, the date, the supplier, and a little bit of field data. And if we put another half hour to work into that, we could probably split that up into individual fields as well. So these are just buttons that are sitting there on the solution. There's obviously all sorts of ways of putting that. No, now actually, another LiveCode customer has built a system which does do OCR on PDFs and then parses the information region by region and brings that into a database. So it's perfectly possible to do. They use Tesseract if you want to go off and do it. It's a bit involved, but you can certainly do that if that's what you want to do. Yeah, but we did not do that in the morning. That'd take a day. So then the other thing we did was exporting data from FileMaker to Word. And this is pretty straightforward as well. So we have our Word exporter. So here we're doing the reverse. We're taking the information, we're fetching the information from the database, and then we're merging that into, this is just a LiveCode field with a logo sitting at the top, and then just a very simple text. Thank you for your business. Your order was as follows. Obviously, we put a bit more work into making that look nicer, but if we look at the code here, we have the data coming back from FileMaker. It's coming back from our JSON array. And then we're putting our product quantity and unit price line, and then we have the line numbers here, so line 7, 9, and 11. So if you count down, you can see that we're putting that chunk into line 7, that's line 9, and that's line 11. So we're replacing the content of that field. And then exporting is a matter of very straightforward little script where we're doing ask file, so that brings up a system file dialog to choose where to save a file, and then if it's empty we exit, otherwise we export it. And export is just a few lines of code, and this one is, it's one line to do the actual export. This is, to go back to the question that you had, this is a paid library actually. It's $50 to get the words export. So hopefully that's giving you a bit of a feel for the sorts of things you can do. Apart from that, it's worth just calling out that we have a really good set of lessons. So if you go onto the LCFM website, we've got all these little guides. So, how do I use a built-in function? How do I use a custom component? How do I draw SVG path, watermark an image? And they're all just really step by step. So we've got pictures, and then you walk through all of the different individual things that you need to do. So, watermarking an image, for example, it's shows you everything that you need to do to build it. We've got some sample script there that you can walk through. We talk about how that works, show you how to install it into the system, and then you ultimately end up with an image that's just got a watermark on top, all built inside FileMaker. So lots of examples, and if you need more, then we certainly can add. The question was, are there functions available from LiveCode for doing calendars or Excel pivot tables? There is a third-party library for manipulating Excel in detail. It's pretty sophisticated. You could certainly build a pivot table in LiveCode. Absolutely, you could. And you could build a calendar as well. There are a couple of different calendar libraries and widgets. I don't know how extensive they are. I've seen some fairly sophisticated calendaring apps done in LiveCode. I don't know whether or not all of those libraries have been released. If you dig around, So the answer in terms of whether you can build those is absolutely yes, you can. Okay, so the question was whether variables are persistent from session to session, or whether they or whether they're just in one session. So the answer is variables themselves will run within a session, and you can define a global variable within the entire LCFM environment, or local variables within specific sections of it. But you also have full access to saving things into the database or to saving things onto disk. So if you want to have persistent state, then you would save it somewhere where it's. And then you can also do things like go into the system preferences folder and save things where you would expect to find them on a device or on a desktop or whatever. All of that, there are functions that'll tell you where to put all of that stuff in LiveCode if you want to do it that way. So you've got loads of options. Okay, so yeah, the lessons portal is there's lots of things there. We can definitely keep adding to that. And then it's also just worth calling out the dictionary. We've got a really good guide to LiveCode and to all of the various different terms. I mentioned encryption earlier. I type in encrypt, I get all of the things to do with encryption, and they come with a little example and tell you, exactly how to use them. So again, you can go in and just start to have a look at all of that. And it's all live, so you can just try something out, see if it works, and then just add a little bit more and see if it works. Okay, so I've got a few more things to show. I'm just going to go back to the slides for a few minutes and then so, just a quick summary then. I mean, LiveCode, over 5,000 different language features that are built in, so very, very extensive in terms of the capabilities. Obviously displaying UI content that's been built in LiveCode within FileMaker, very rich, very interactive content. 30 customizable interface objects that are built into LiveCode and flexible widgets. But remember that you can build your own. So widgets are these black box components, and in the latest version of LiveCode, which is what we're using for this, you can go out to the operating system and pull in native controls, or you can go out and build SVG canvas to render a widget. So whatever you're dreaming up, you'll be able to build it. You can integrate external systems, including complete access to OS APIs. In the latest version of LiveCode, you don't need to community-built libraries for all kinds of projects. There's some commercial libraries, but there are hundreds and hundreds of open source libraries to learn from. And you can create solutions for Mac and Windows for the plugin, as well as iOS using our server and using the web versions 14 through 16, and embed custom components and functions into your solutions to deliver to clients. So in terms of the roadmap, there are really three core things left on the main LCFM roadmap. The first one is to support leaving LiveCode windows open when the FileMaker layouts are running. So at the moment, you pop up, your LiveCode window comes up on top of FileMaker, you make a change and you go back into FileMaker. And what we're going to do is set it so that you can leave palette windows or other windows that float and stay open whilst FileMaker is running. So then, if you have a billing calculator, you can leave it on the screen. You don't have that kind of modal mode. It's something that's proven to be technically quite complex to get working, but we have figured out how to do it. So it is coming. Running on server, I think I mentioned that. At the moment, you can use the LiveCode server, but it'll be much better when that's directly integrated into FileMaker server. And then also on iOS, again, at the moment, you can do it with a separate app, but it'll be much better when we integrate that properly into the iOS. So the question was, will the processes run on the server instead of on the client when it's running on the server? Yes, you'll be able to run all of those processes on the server. Well, you'll have a choice. If you want to run something client-side for whatever reason, you'll be able to run it client-side, but you'll also be able to do any kind of data crunching or whatever on the server. So we've simplified the pricing. It is simply $2 per active user per month. So very easy to get started, not a huge barrier to entry. We also have annual licensing available, and we have vertical licensing, which is per product licensing. So if you're building a plugin or a set of templates or a product, then just come and talk to us, and we'll just give you a license for that product rather than having to work out how many users you've got and all of that kind of stuff. We also have perpetual licenses available. We know that certain clients that you may have will require a perpetual license. So again, that's something that we have available. If your needs are custom and they do not appear to fit well into these boxes, then come and have a conversation with us. We're always up for having a conversation. We want to try and make it work. It's also worth noting we do service projects, so we can help with just about any technical project. We have a team that maintains a platform on 7 different operating systems. I have yet to encounter a technical project that we are not able to do. So if you need us to help you solve a particular problem, or even just get a bit of training with LCFM, or help you debug an application or whatever, come and talk to us. We have a services team. Ian from our team is also here today, so go and talk to him as well if you want to do that. So I do have one more thing to show off, which I've not announced publicly just yet. It's brand new for this tour. And this is something that we may complete, and we're, as much as anything, doing market research and looking to find out if there are some companies that we can kind of partner with to do this. But I want to give you a little demo of something really quite interesting that we've been working on. Now, this demo is something that involves Wi-Fi and multiple devices, and I don't like to fly as dangerously as that doing a demo, so I have pre-recorded this little clip. It's just a few minutes long. So I have a copy of FileMaker Pro version 16. I'm going to open this very simple FileMaker application that we made. This is here, and the application is very simple application to store notes. So we have the note body, the note heading, and a list of notes here as well. Navigate quite straightforward. This is all running on the FileMaker server. I'm going to leave this in. Now if I come into LiveCode, what I have here is I've actually written a footer that brings in the FileMaker layout and connects to the main FileMaker server. So my user is still here. Log in. And now I have what looks like exactly the same application here. I go into this note and I say, hello, group, attention there, and so it uploads to server. Here, change the message to after that, for example, wait for a short moment, I will update here in LiveCode. Now, why is this of any interest? Well, of course, there's lots that you can do when you've got your FileMaker application on LiveCode, including adding all the various native elements, graphics, and things like that LiveCode has. That's not the main reason that we've done this, actually. The main reason that we've done this is because LiveCode supports a platform natively. FileMaker doesn't. So you notice in LiveCode you can deploy to Mac, Windows, Linux, and iOS. You can also deploy to Android. And so what we've done here is set this up as a Windows application. What we do is set up the various settings that we can go with, and you save it as set up application. And I did this step earlier, so just to show you what that looks like. It comes out and it builds you a notes.pk file. So if I go back into my Android computer, I have an Android device. Okay. So if I load this up, hopefully my device will show. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're viewing the Android device. I've got my note application which I installed. I load that up. I have exactly the same experience here. So log in. Not thoroughly secure, but this is just a demo. Log in, and I have the same application, and as you can see, I have exactly the same data in it. So if I now change the script here. So the question was, we've used Notes as a front end for FileMaker server where the data resides. So yes, we're using the FileMaker API to get all of the data from FileMaker. So all your data stays in FileMaker, all of the relationships stay in FileMaker, all of that work that you did to build the FileMaker database stays exactly where it is. But if you have a mixed environment where you've got lots of iOS devices and you've got lots of Android devices, now they can all access the same data source. So the question was, when I opened two notes, I didn't open copies of the same file, I opened an app that I wrote. So yes, I had an app that I wrote on Android which had imported the notes layout, and then I'd loaded the other notes file from FileMaker server just so as you could see the two of them running simultaneously. So one of them's running inside FileMaker and one of them's running inside an app. But they're both communicating with the same data source, so they stay in sync. So the question is, if it was a complicated data with 20 layouts and lots of different scripts and things, you could put it all over in this app. Yes, so we do translate layouts and we will translate scripts. We've got a lot of that done at a prototype level. I'll come on in a moment because we're actually looking, this is partly market research. We want to make sure that there is enough market demand for this. So I'm going to come on and talk about the pre-release program that we have. But assuming that we push commit and finish this project, all of that stuff will happen, absolutely. Question is, can you get a self-built app onto an iPhone or an Android without going to the App Store? So on Android, the answer is yes. You can connect any device and you can put your apps on. You do not have to go through a store. On iOS, you have to go through the store. The only exception are if you're a developer, then you can install stuff using your development certificate. And if you're a member of the Apple Enterprise program, then you can install apps using that program, and that's not through the main App Store. So that's the only other route. Android is wide open. You can just copy apps on. I just copied this app literally from my Mac straight onto that Android device, and that was it. It just started running. And the question is, it figures out networking all that stuff. Yes, we do all of that. We've built all of that in automatically to connect back to your FileMaker database. So the question was, that partly this is about exporting layouts, and partly this is about going to Android. It's possible that FileMaker are also going to go to Android. Obviously, if FileMaker go to Android, then that's great. There'll be a lot that you can do in this solution in terms of having access to native device features and some of the ways that we do synchronization that's going to be different. So it will come down to being a choice. It will come down to depending on what you need. So the question is whether you'll be able to piggyback on an existing app, a bit like FileMaker Go, or whether you'll have to build an entire app. The answer is that you should be able to structure it either way. I mean, LiveCode applications can also pull in component parts. So you should be able to essentially play a layout. I think in the first version, we're going to be focusing on you building an app which goes out and does it. But I mean, the question was, what's the pricing for the main version of LiveCode? So there is an open source version of the main version of LiveCode, which is completely free, but it requires your apps to also be open source. If you want to create commercial apps, the typical license is a $2,000 a year developer license to allow you to build commercial apps. There is also a $500 version for really small businesses. So the question is what you need in order to do the development with LiveCode if it's $2 a month per user. The answer is that you would need a developer seat for $2 per user per month. That's it. We include the LiveCode IDE with that. We're charging for your users, basically. So hopefully $2 a month is not too large a barrier to get started. Yes. Yes. It's $2 a month. You're a user. The developer's a user, and so are your end users. We just count it all exactly the same. The question was, does the demo and all of that stuff come with it? Yes, that all comes with it, together with the LiveCode IDE. So at the moment, it's codenamed LCFM for Android. We might actually call it LCFM native. It will be part of the same product. It's the same licensing. It's the same product. You'll either deploy as a plugin or you'll deploy as a native app. So I mean, you're going to have a choice, but we're making it as simple as possible. So it's all going to be part of the same thing. So the question is the app in LiveCode faster on an iPhone than FileMaker Go? Is whether LiveCode is faster at changing layouts and redrawing screens? I don't know. I haven't benchmarked it. LiveCode produces some very big, heavyweight, animation-heavy screens that come up very fast. I would be amazed if it wasn't instant. I mean, that's the sort of speed that we see generally on LiveCode apps. If there is some performance issue, we'll fix it, but it should be very, very quick. I mean, I've never had any performance problems with FileMaker Go. I mean, maybe I haven't used any really huge layouts on iOS, but I've always found that to work pretty well. So the question is there anything that needs to change to make it work on iOS as well as on Android? It was interesting because we got all of these questions yesterday, and I wasn't anticipating that people, because I know FileMaker have got a really strong iOS story, I wasn't anticipating that people were going to really be really keen on this, but actually the answer is no, there's no change. It's the same. You just deploy to iOS. I mean, LiveCode is multi-platform, so you can also deploy this to iOS, and it's all just the same system and the same idea. So the question is, what learning materials do we have to get up to speed? So on the website, we have, we have the guides, both the LCFM specific guides, lots and lots of them, but also on the main LiveCode site, we've got hundreds and hundreds of lessons on how to do specific things. Also inside the product, we've got those interactive point-and-click tutorials. There are books on LiveCode that you can get. I mean, there's lots and lots of material out there. We've got video courses as well, all of that kind of stuff. So it really just depends on what you need to learn to do, but there's a lot of content out there. Okay, so as I've said, we can import existing layouts. We were focusing this on Android, but having had the discussion yesterday in Portland, we're starting to realize that there's probably quite a demand to do this on iOS. You'll be able to use your existing FM server for the data storage and the relationships. All of that will just continue to work exactly as you would expect. But here's a really important key feature of what the LiveCode solution will do, and will do very, very well. And that is that it will have the ability to work both online and offline. And what that means is that if your phone is working happily with a signal and you're making changes and you lose signal, you can go on making changes, and the moment you get a signal back, it will go out and it will send all of that request back up. So it will do the synchronization. And it will not require any user interaction. There's no button to click. There's nothing to think about. It will just sit there in the background. It will wait until it gets a connection, and it will go back and it will send that data perfectly back to the FileMaker solution. So your actual experience of using this app is going to be a lot better than if you didn't have that capability. It gives you a really, really good end user feel to your mobile app. That was actually something that people said yesterday was a really important point, and I hadn't understood how much the differences between what we're planning to do in syncing and what's maybe available at the moment, because we've done quite a number of syncing projects for other customers, and it's quite a nightmare, but we've worked out how you do this, and you have to do it very carefully, and you have to make it completely seamless. The user can't have to have any interaction with this. It's just something that they really don't want to know about. It has to go and do it as soon as it gets a connection and send the data back up. So it will work online and offline. Otherwise, you may as well just use WebDirect on that. And obviously, you get full access to the native feature set on the device. So if you want to bring in data from the accelerometer, if you want to take a photo, if you want to bring in the location data, if you want to use a fingerprint sensor to authenticate, whatever it is that you need to do, all of that stuff you can do in your LiveCode app. So the pricing will be exactly the same. It's the same idea. It's $2 per active user per month. We'll have annual and vertical licenses available. There'll also be a service option, so you'll be able to take this tool and do the conversion yourself. I would best describe it as semi-automatic. It's largely automatic, but there's some configuration details that you have to put in, so there's a bit of technical knowledge. It's not too difficult, but there will be some. So if you don't want to do any of that, then we will have a service option, which will take your app, starting at $1,000, take 10 layouts, and move it over, package it up, build it, test it, and deliver it as a native Android app. So that would be an option if you don't want to do any learning at all in order to use this. So what we put together, and this is really to gauge market interest and to find a number of companies to work with, is we put together a pre-release program. And what we're doing here, the commitment to participate in this program is $1,000. So we're looking for reasonable sized vendors that have got fairly serious apps that they need to take out to Android or maybe even to iOS to test out all of the syncing features. And it brings a number of benefits. So first of all, we need enough signups in order to make this project happen. We require sufficient market demand. We need to know. To put this in perspective, we've done a prototype, we've spec'd out this project, but to finish this project is the same level of engineering effort as pretty much the entire LCFM project was. It's another massive, massive engineering commitment. What I don't want to do is do that and then find that there isn't that level of market demand for this. So we need a certain number of companies to sign up in order to make this project happen. During the program, we will either do the conversion for you, so that's essentially what would be the $1,000 option, or we'll work with you to do it yourself, so you may well want to learn to use the tool yourself. Either way, we will work with you and make sure that you're able to do that port. We will then include a $1,000 credit towards your ongoing monthly fees. So essentially, this program is free. This is about qualifying to make sure that the market exists. It's not about actually charging you extra. It's essentially a free program to participate in. And we are only taking commitments at this stage. So we've got a web form on our website if you're interested in this. All we're looking for is enough commitments. We're not going to bill anybody anything until we have enough people on board to know that the program is going to go ahead, at which point we will come and bill you for that program. In terms of expectations, for those of you that do participate in this, we guarantee that your app will work to your satisfaction when we build the first, or we ship the first version of LCFM for Android. If it doesn't, it will work, but if it doesn't, for whatever reason, then we would offer you a full refund if we weren't able to rectify whatever problem is. So if you get on board early, we'll make sure that all your specific layouts work really well, that the tool's tested against whatever it is that you're trying to set up, and any little custom code or complicated things that you've done will go into our test framework. So it's a really good way to make sure that the product works really well with your solutions. Our goal would be to aim to be at the release candidate stage within 3 months of confirming that this program is going to go ahead. So we're looking to take a decision towards the end of October, and if we get enough people, then that means that we'll have a release candidate very early next year. That's the target. So we should be shipping relatively shortly after that, and we've had a chance to iron out any of the bugs and issues. So if you want to make that happen, go along to filemaker.livecode.com/Android. All the information is there to sign up, but there's also a form there where if you're thinking about this, but you're not sure that it's for you, use the contact form, send us some details about your project. Somebody from our team will get in touch and we can have a discussion about it. We need to understand what the market demand is for this. So even if this is, I might have an app in 6 months, but I don't have it now, so in order to take part now, go and tell us that, because we need to really understand if this is something that's worth doing and worth us coming along and finishing. The question is, if I have 1,000 users, is that $2 a month per user? Yes, the answer is yes. But it's for an active user. So it's not 1,000 users who are not using the program. It's people who are using it within every 30-day billing cycle. And if it's a huge application and you've really got that many users, come and talk to us. You know, we'll do something that works for you and works for us. We'll do something sensible. Can LiveCode determine between cats and dogs when taking a photograph? I don't believe that feature is built in. If you're talking about using image processing libraries, I mean, there are image libraries out there. You'd certainly be able to wrap those in LiveCode. I can't think on the top of my head of a customer who's done it, but I see no reason that you wouldn't be able to. I mean, you should be able to program something like that if you've got the appropriate library to do the actual AI on the images. You'd be able to. So there's a question on how to handle syncing conflicts. I mean, there's a few different ways that you can handle conflicts. You can have it bring up a dialogue and ask the user to choose. You can have it create an extra record. I mean, there's a couple of different policies that you can set up, basically. So there'll be a little bit of definition. We've done that in different ways for different customers over the years, just depending on what they need. And the question is, what other databases do we use or support in LiveCode? I mean, we have access to quite a number of different databases in LiveCode. So Postgres, SQLite, MySQL, Oracle, you know, these various different databases. I mean, there are some huge database applications that have been built in LiveCode, usually by a team of engineers who very carefully designed those databases. I mean, one of the largest is University of Vienna, one of the largest universities in Central Europe, 90,000 users in terms of students and staff. Every single facet of that university functioning, from room allocation to course materials to exam results to staff payroll, it's all done on a LiveCode built system, which is stored in an Oracle database. It's actually a brilliant system. They've designed it so they've got all the interface code in the database, along with all of the code to access all of the stuff, and then all of the records and tables, and it all just kind of comes out as it needs to and updates really well.
They didn't build their own database with LiveCode. They're using Oracle database.
The question is it's a front end, yes. I mean, it's a front end to the database. LiveCode does not have a database as such. It just front ends to other systems. Absolutely. Yes. FileMaker is the easiest database that it front ends to.
Any other questions for Kevin?
Thank you.